Let's do it. Hey, everybody. We're back again with the sci-fi slash horror segment of our 2010s, 2010 to 2019. We got Brian, AYB Almain, and Doc. And this is an interesting category. I always tend to lean a little bit more to sci-fi than horror, but we'll see how it plays out this time around. Brian, you're going to lead off.
Okay, this is my favorite, one of my favorite categories. So, number 5, I've got the follow-up to The Shining, Doctor Sleep. It's the sequel for The Shining. It's got Danny as a grown man now, and he's had bouts with alcoholism just like his father, and basically as a means to try to suppress his shining ability. And eventually he hits rock bottom and claws his way back to the top in time enough to assist this young girl who is being terrorized by a group called the Knot, which are all people who consume people who have the shining ability. They consume their essence. So it's really, Ewan McGregor plays the grown-up Danny. It's really an interesting take on where the shining could have gone. And everybody always was curious about who actually Danny was talking to when he was talking to Tony, when he was growing up, and he was talking to his future self. That's who he was talking to. So Dr. Sleep kind of wraps up a little bit of those loose ends that we wanted as viewers. Number 4 is Us. It's Gordon Peele's is the director. It's he does a great suspenseful horror type films. It came off Get Out, which I actually like this one a lot better than Get Out. It's about these it's like you have these evil doppelgangers who exist underneath the regular city that you live in, and they exist and they're subject to the moves and decisions that you make in your life. But what happens when you encounter them and they swap out your lives and take over for you, and then you're stuck down there? It's this really eerie thing. You're not even sure exactly whether or not you're dealing with the good guys or the bad guys the whole time that things are going on. You don't know whether the whole family has been replaced already. It's got the Duke guy, the big Winston Duke guy is the father, and I can't remember the girl's name who is the main character. It's really eerie though. Peele does a great job on these suspenseful movies like this, and it's well worth the watch. Number 3 for me is Rogue One, Star Wars Rogue One. Doc's already talked about it. It is probably of the 5 post prequel movies that they've released over the last 7 to 8 years. It is the strongest one because the story is the strongest. All the rest of them, I just think they said, oh, it doesn't matter what kind of story you got. Just throw a bunch of ships out there and make a bunch of sound effects, and we'll piece it all together. This one actually has a story. They do a better job. It's well acted. It's got a pretty strong cast overall. And we kind of knew the story in between anyway. We kind of knew what happened just before Star Wars: A New Hope and little bits and pieces. And this kind of filled it in. Anybody who's a Star Wars geek is going to freak out at the Darth Vader scene at the end where, the guys are all in the tunnel and this is smoke everywhere and this red lightsaber just appears out of nowhere. And of course, the special effects have gotten better since then. And Darth Vader's just kicking the shit out of all these all over the stuff. And you're going, and you're actually, of course, as Star Wars fans, we're going, yeah, Darth, kill those guys. We're actually rooting for the bad guys, It's like, crazy. It's great. I mean, it's the best one that was made. Probably the worst one that was made was Solo, and I thought that was garbage. They ruined a whole character basically by even attempting to make that movie. Number 2 for me is A Quiet Place, and I know that the sequel just released in theaters here recently for part 2 of it. But what a premise. Let me tell you, you didn't waste any money on dialogue on this film, right? Because it's all about the premise of you having to stay quiet and use signs and stuff like that to communicate. But you're not going to waste any money on dialogue between the characters. But it's an alien invasion in which these creatures are they're tuned into sonic sounds, and they can track you down by those means. So the premise is you have to stay as quiet as possible, or they'll find you. And probably the weirdest, most suspenseful scene in it is when she's having the baby in the
Giving
bathtub.
birth.
And imagine the
Yeah.
pain that she's going through and trying
Yeah.
to hold it inside. And finally, like, it's just too much. And she lets out that big yell of pain during childbirth. And you just know, you're like, oh shit, they're
Man,
coming
that's it.
now, man. You know they're coming for you now. Great. I mean, just this is where the suspense is built in that movie is fantastic. I mean, I like John Krasinski's one of my favorite actors, and his wife Emily Blunt is also in it. I mean, they're just a great tandem to put in a movie together. They have such great chemistry. It's wonderful. Number one for me is the sci-fi drama Interstellar. I thought they did a really good job of like bringing this as close to science as you almost possibly can theoretically. I mean, obviously we can't go out and prove that this is how time travel would work on a physics level unless we could actually put it to the test ourselves. And then there's no coming back when you actually put it to the test for the individuals that are involved. But the science, and most physics people will tell you that the science was really close on it. The Earth is dying. Matthew McConaughey agrees to go on this interstellar trip in which he'll be traveling through a black hole into other realms of space. He knows no matter what, then when he comes back, that his daughter would at the very least be as old as he is when he leaves. But other circumstances kind of play out, and he ends up gone because of time dilation, ends up gone for the majority of her life. And when he comes back, she's an old lady. I don't want to give out the rest of the film, but it's definitely worth seeing. You end up finding out that he played an integral part in humanity's being able to escape their plight on the earth. And so the past is the future, is the present. You get all sorts of weird stuff going, and you would expect that. Why? Because it's Christopher Nolan thing.
Christopher
right?
Nolan,
He's
man.
gonna do that to you. He's going to mess with
Right.
your head a little bit. But I thought he did a great job. I thought he did a great job applying science fiction and science and putting it together in a pretty decent film.
Okay.
Good stuff there, Brian.
Nice. What do you got, Doc?
Well, I'm going to start off with my number 5 is I liked Get Out. I liked a little bit more than Us. So I have Get Out as my number 5. So it's more appealing. I think I'd like just maybe the psychological aspect of it and almost the experimental side of things that Jordan was doing with this movie, which really, obviously it revolves around a few things, one being race, obviously. But I like the psychological side of this movie, and I like the way it was done. And it was a breakout for him to get into Us and everything else that he's done. And looks like he's going to have a pretty successful run here. I think he's a talented fella. So this is a really good movie in my eyes. And under this category, horror sci-fi, it's a sweet spot for me. So that comes into my number 5 is Get Out. Definitely worth a watch if you have not seen it. So. My number 4, I'm not big into these kind of movies or anything like this, but this one I really did like. It's World War Z. I'm not a zombie dude in a lot of senses, man. I mean, I can Dawn of the Dead or something classic like that I'll watch. But I mean, outside that, the comedic side of Zombieland. But outside that, I'm not watching too many zombie things. I'm not watching Walking Dead. I'm not watching any of those. World War Z is a really good zombie movie, man. I don't know how else to say this. This is Brad Pitt is really good in this movie. It's a pretty good nonstop horror zombie flick, man. It's going with answers and how to get these answers and stuff like this. I thought it was really well done.
I liked how the zombies were more of a hive mind.
Yeah.
I mean, the way they attacked was this weird hive, like how bees or ants would attack you.
Yeah, exactly the way they're coming at you, right?
Yeah.
And it's not too often I'd sit there and say, I hope they do a sequel. Well, I really do hope they do a sequel for this, man. I really want to see World War Z Part 2, to be honest with you. So World War Z, that's my number 4. My number 3 is actually the middle of a trilogy, actually. So mine's Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Um, I like the first one, reintroducing the Planet of the Apes. The way it should have been on the Mark Wahlberg one. Put that aside, because that was not a good one. But the reintroduction of the real Planet of the Apes with the first one with James Franco and everything else that happened in San Francisco, that was a pretty good little start to the flick. But this one here by Matt Reeves, this Dawn of Planet of the Apes, man, this takes it up. This is a serious movie, man. This is really well done. Obviously, the special effects that are happening here with Caesar and everything else here. I liked it more than the final world. I just found the action to be in this movie, the storylines that go with it, and actually the humans and the apes, and it's Planet of the Apes, man. What do you want? This is not going to be, it's a horror sci-fi flick, and that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a sci-fi flick out of this one, and it's really well made. I think the Matt Reeves, who I think is pretty underrated in some sense, he's done some pretty good stuff. So I love that flick, to be honest with you. That's my number 3. So my number 2 is one, Brian, I think you had this in maybe the action adventure. It's Inception. I put it here for the sci-fi aspect of it. You're right. It's Christopher Nolan. Yeah, man, he's just playing with your mind every time he's putting something out there. And 9 times out of 10, he's not giving you, and maybe The Dark Knight or something like those lines. It's like it's straightforward kind of movies, and they're pretty serious flicks too. So, but when he gets into your mind games, and Inception is really exactly that. Tom Hardy's fantastic in this. DiCaprio, good cast on a dream of a dream of a dream. How far down can you go to get information from people and stuff like that? The concepts, this is Nolan's thinking for sure, and special effects, everything else that goes with this movie. Pretty high end sci-fi flick, man, if you want my opinion. So that's my number 2. Number 1 is Brian's number 1. So it's Nolan again, and it's Interstellar. So I think Interstellar is kind of turning into a classic in my neighborhood, if you want the truth. This is definitely one of the better ones to me. Definitely the best of the decade, and then I might go a little further than that. I think this is really a really well done movie, man. This is, it's Nolan playing with your mind again, but shaking hands with the past as you go by. There's a whole bunch of things that are happening in here, and just telling a story that you never thought you'd actually kind of see in one sense, first off, and actually the background and the backstory of what's happening on Earth and what's actually happening in space, and all these different things, all down to a watch and a bookshelf. Who knows how it all intertwines, but this guy makes it work, man. And it's like I said, it's pretty high end again. Great cast again. The story's fantastic, and if you have not seen this movie, you should watch this movie. To me, it's kind of, like I said, floating in the classic neighborhood of this kind of genre of movie, if you want the truth. Interstellar is a classic, man.
There we go. Well, I'm gonna have to throw a couple hot takes in here soon.
Go there, Rich.
We're not going to the overrated yet, are we?
No, we could, but we're not. Let's say that my favorite 2 Christopher Nolan movies are his first 2, or early on in his career. I think he's going way out there, but I don't want to rain on anybody's parade. I like what's the first movie he did? Memento. And I like Insomnia with Robin Williams and Al Pacino. Those are the 2 movies I like.
Have you seen Tenet yet?
What's that? Tenet? No, I haven't seen Tenet. I've been avoiding it. I didn't see Inception.
I've seen it. It's wild.
I didn't see Inception till last week.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan. And I have seen Interstellar. That is an above average movie to me. I liked the first half of it very much, and then it got a little out there for me. I picked some outer space movies, or but I picked 3 others above Interstellar. But let's get into it. Number 5. This is my only true horror movie, and it's a psychological horror movie. It's called Devil. This takes place, it's 80 minutes in an elevator, 5 strangers, they're stuck. I think it's well executed, and eventually they start turning on each other. There's a reason for it. It's kind of all unknown people. I don't know if there's one famous actor in it. It was either written or produced by M. Night Shyamalan. There's a director named
Yeah.
John Eric Dowdell in it. It's almost like a student film or a first film, but it worked for me. Number 4, Arrival, starring Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner, and Forrest Whitaker. This is kind of a thinking person's sci-fi, in my opinion. You got a linguist hired by the military. Amy Adams is the linguist. She's lost a daughter, a 9-year-old daughter, and she's hired to communicate with aliens before the tensions start leading to war. They know where this UFO is, and she's trying to communicate with them, trying to understand the unknown through humanity, trying to do it without rockets and blowing them off the face of the earth before they fire back or whatever. It's an interesting film, directed by that's Denis Villeneuve, again, that French guy that I mentioned earlier. Number 3 is one that I might get a little shade on. It's in the fantasy realm. It's The Shape of Water, directed by Guillermo del Toro. This is an odd movie, to be sure. You got a mute woman, a cleaner in this mysterious military base building, and she falls in love with this humanoid amphibian type creature who's locked in a tank of water. The government has found him in the Amazon or something from Africa and brought him over and studying him. And she, because she can't talk, she sort of communicates with him because he feels like an outsider. You have to buy into that bizarre fairy tale stuff, which Guillermo del Toro has given us before in what's the name of the movie we raved about?
Oh, Pan's Labyrinth.
Pan's Labyrinth. Different setting, different story, but he's able to show the humanity and the charm. This either works for you or it doesn't. The woman's played by Sally Hawkins. She was nominated for Best Actress. Michael Shannon appears here as this really violent, kind of grotesque guy who's overseeing this project. And there's Russian involvement. There's a Russian spy in there as well. And they're trying to determine how they're going to get this
Isn't it weird that there's this character in Shape of Water that resembles Abe Sapien from Hellboy, and it's another Guillermo del Toro movie?
Yeah.
It's just really weird. I thought there was going to be some weird correlation there, but evidently there wasn't.
No, I don't think there is. You got supporting characters, Octavia Spencer, who's excellent as the friend of Sally Hawkins, and Richard Jenkins as her neighbor, who's sort of an artistic kind of guy, and they get involved with getting this creature out of custody and back into the water. It's an interesting film. Number 2 is Gravity. I know it's slow paced, but it worked for me. Sandra Bullock out in space, and she's a medical engineer on her first shuttle mission, along with George Clooney, who's a veteran astronaut, on his last flight before retirement. Visually stunning. I wish I would have saw it in the big screen. I happened to see it later on home video. Alfonso Cuarón, director. Bullock eventually is out there by herself, and she carries the movie. She's stuck in space, talking to herself a lot, and eventually there's a splashdown scene. And I enjoyed the movie. It lets you know what it's like out there. The visuals are outstanding. My number 1 is The Martian, starring Matt Damon, directed by Ridley Scott, an astronaut who again becomes stranded on Mars in this sandstorm or whatever. He becomes separated from the guys he was sent up there with. He's assumed to be dead. They're leaving them there. It's a study of human behavior. He develops a sense of humor on how to bide time and wait, mask fear. He's growing potatoes up there to survive. It reminds me of a lot of Castaway, except in space, where Castaway's on the island. He's pretty much left to his own defenses. Again, in the supporting cast, you got Jessica Chastain, Kristen Wiig turns up, Jeff Daniels. Good cast. he happens to be a botanist and he's growing potatoes on Mars. And it worked for me. I like The Martian. So I stayed away from the horror with the exception of Devil, and I went more with the sci-fi this time around.
I don't know how it actually works there, Rich, but I think 2 or 3 of your movies on your list show up. We have 3 categories that could show up in: overrated, wild card, or sleeper. I think 2 or 3 of your movies are in one of those 3 categories. All 3 of them are out there somewhere. 2 or
Okay.
3 of them.
All right, so they'll show up later.
They'll show up later.
They'll show up.
Yep. I have probably one that may show up in the overrated, but I may not do it. I haven't decided yet. That would be Inception, just for the record. But anyway, I really had a hard time with it, and still, even if I watched it again, I'm not sure I would like it. It's just too much, too out there. It tries to do too much, and I don't think it succeeds. Other people call it a masterpiece. I just don't see it. But it's all in the eye of the beholder, I guess.
They're all different ones for different things, right?
Yeah,
So,
everybody. I mean, my mind
Sure.
doesn't work towards that kind of film. I have a hard time with time warp movies and illogic movies. My brain doesn't function that way. I need logic. I need realistic violence instead of comic book violence. That's another thing that turns me off. Like in John Wick, 200 bullets or whatever, how many people he kills. That stuff just doesn't cut it for me. I want to see like a war film of somebody gets their head blown off, they get their head blown off. You don't come back from that. Even in Deadpool, there's people getting whacked on sides of the buildings and stuff falling on them, and they're getting up, and it's too insane. I have a problem with the Batman movies. They try to do too much too. A lot of them. The Dark Knight Rises did not work for me at all. I have to be honest. But that'll come later.
Yeah, can never have the same, but it's the spice.
No,
of
it's
life,
good.
the
It's
variety.
well rounded because we have 3 different people looking at 3 different things 3 different ways, and that's the way it should
Totally.
be. So
Totally.
that makes it well rounded. If we all had the same opinion, it would be like paint drying. It wouldn't be any fun.
It'd be pretty boring, man.
It would.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to hit our next segment, which is coming up soon. That's going to be sports films of the 2010s, and we'll see if we can agree or disagree on some of those. For the time being, that's Brian, Doc, I'm Rich. Please leave comments. Love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.